grow up with the NES, PlayStation, Star Wars, cartoons, and 80s TV? Do you like to think who would win in a fight between Batman and the Master Chief? Comics, games, movies, music, and TV, they're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. Games, movies, music, and TV, they're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of This Week in Geek. This Week in Geek.
Hello everybody, Alex here. Sorry if I'm sounding a little rough, still sort of losing my voice from all of the E3 stuff. Hopefully that's back to normal within a week or so. But we have another shorter review episode here for you because we're taking a break from the regular news until next week when we should be back with a regular news-based pop culture show. That's contingent, though, also on I will be getting my second vaccination shot really close to recording time, so it all depends on if I come down with like the flu-like symptoms or something and maybe I can't record. If that's the case, it'll probably be another review episode or another thing we've got in the can releasing in its place, but everything should be, fingers crossed, back to normal starting with next week's show. As far as what do we have here, it's sort of a hodgepodge. We're going to have a bit of a discussion. I didn't really have a spot to put larger reviews. A lot of these are like first impressions or initial reviews of indie titles that we were sent over the course of the last like month or two, actually. Stuff that we didn't quite get to because of other commitments or had just small impressions on things that are early access, things that are smaller indie titles, and just for the most part want to mention them briefly by name mostly, and we're going to do that sort of here in the intro because we only really have one, maybe two reviews ready to go that are regular reviews, so this is going to be a little more free form. I'll talk about a few things that I've been checking out and watching, especially as I recover from all the hectic stuff going on around here. First and foremost, we received a review code for Steam for Dark Deity. That is one of the games that was shown off at the Freedom Games little mini showcase press thing that was done at E3, and that is the Shining Force style tactical RPG made by it appears to be like a 3 or 4 person team. I've been pretty impressed with it. It's got some quirks here and there as far as it could use a little work with the loading screens and making things a little more fluid and a little less indie looking, because there's aspects of the game that look really high quality and it plays really well. It's really well balanced, especially with the different difficulty levels. The animation is smooth. It looks like something that could have been put out by a much larger team. The artwork is great. There's just a couple moments like when you're loading between the screens where it just seems a little indie-rific, if that makes any sense. It's hard for me to put a tangible quality to it. It's very well made. If you're a fan of like early style rock paper scissors-esque Fire Emblem type of games and the Shining Force series, it's worth checking out. I think it's going for, don't quote me on it, I think it's like $10 or $15 or something like that. And if that's the case, let me take a look. I'll pull it up quickly here. It is how much? I cannot tell because I own it. It's cheap though. Just know that. So that is worth checking out. I've been playing bits and pieces of that in between. Very, very impressed for a small indie team that sort of came out of nowhere. Other ones we've been checking out is one that was sent a while ago and sort of slipped through the cracks was Fate of Kai. Now this was something that interested us in that it's a visual narrative, like picture book esque type of game where you're working your way through just. It's almost like you're experiencing a graphic novel, but you're also making choices as you go through, depending on how how you play it. You'll come to the end. It's sort of like a choose your adventure style title. It is, I think, about $15 or so. It's a single player. It's not a hard game. It's more of a casual puzzle style game. And it's not too long to beat. This is one that was sort of sent to us just, sort of randomly. And we said, hey, we'll check it out if we can. And I've just had a little bit of downtime where I was like, I want to play a couple things that are a little more straightforward. If you like visual novel style of games, point and click adventure, the old school stuff from like the 80s, like the Sierra stuff, only done and represented more in a hand-drawn, like children's book style thing, this might be one for you, and it runs on a potato. Like, to give you the minimum requirements, you need Windows XP, 1 gigahertz processor, 512 gigs of RAM, a GeForce 6. Like, I'm pretty sure this would run on most integrated graphics nowadays, and 2 gigs of space. It's not meant to be this graphically intense game. It's just meant to be a good narrative, fun, puzzle adventure style game, and it's worth checking out. I don't want to spoil it because it's a story based game. I'm not going to reveal the story, but it's only like a couple hours to beat, and you can play it a couple more times over and over again to maybe get slightly different results. But it's worth checking out. Next thing I want to say, as far as this indie showcase there that we're going through, is we were also sent Cartel Tycoon, and it's pretty much what you'd expect. It's the world building SimCity style game, a little bit of Civ in it, but you're building up a cartel, as you can tell. So it's a bit of a twist. Remember Tropico, that sort of style of thing, and at the same time you're trying to build up a whole means of getting your drugs and everything out of it's what if you mixed Breaking Bad with SimCity. If that's probably the best way to describe it. This is another PC game that we received a code for, and it runs on fairly medium hardware, like a GTX 960 is recommended. So if you've got a computer that's newer than like 6 years old, pretty much anything will run on it. So I'm a big fan of SimCity style games. I get absorbed and I'll end up playing for hours and hours on end. If you're not into that style of game, it may not be for you, but it's got enough of a twist on the whole genre to keep me interested, at least. And we've also, speaking of that style of game, we also got a Steam version of the early access copy of Industries of Titan. That's a game that we talked about last year when we got an Epic Games Store. It was exclusive to Epic Games Store early access, and it was pretty limited. They've fleshed out a heck of a lot in that time, and the Steam version is, I think, a little more balanced, and there's a lot of the roadmap has been filled in. It's a pretty robust game now. I'm just only going to mention that briefly because they sent a code saying, hey, if you want to check it out and see what's different, it's too numerous to really explain, but it's basically a full-fledged, like, really high-end game now when it comes to all the components that have been implemented, the balancing. I feel it's a little more fair playing it. As far as the flow of the game seems a little bit smoother. Other than that, I was already sold on that game a year ago. So it's, again, in that same style of the world-building, SimCity style. Totally worth it. Now, and the other indie titles that we've been sent over the course of the last few weeks or so that maybe aren't going to get like full reviews, that we're just going to give impressions on here, are Kingdom of Arcadia. Now, this is a game that I had seen my brother play, I think on Steam, and then now it was getting a console release. And that is... think like an old school it's not dungeon platformer is probably the best way to describe it. Now, I've received a PlayStation 5 key. Is this the kind of game that's going to automatically be like, oh my god, it runs so much better on PS5 than it does on PS4? No, this is the kind of game that scales well to pretty much any platform. It's because it's done in a style of like pseudo 16-bit dungeon crawly platformy. You upgrade your sword, your armor, and then your throwing weapons, and you go through 4 to 5 levels for each castle, trying to find some secrets for breaking away walls, killing enemies. It's a pretty chill game that way. It's not a super Twitch gamey. It's not going to be something that's like Metroidvania-y. Like once you solve the puzzle of that level, you move on to the next. You build up enough money to purchase upgrades to your weapons and armor, fight a boss, get an item, move on to the next castle. Pretty straightforward stuff. Super fun. I was playing it for several hours, just messing around trying to find all the little secrets with breakaway walls and stuff. I know that it had been out for a while on PC, but the console release was only in the last couple months, and we got a code, I think it was a week or two ago for it. But it is brought to us by East Asia Soft, which I've seen before on some titles. They're putting out console versions of some PC games too. It's available PS4, Xbox One, Switch, PS5, Series X and S. Doesn't matter what platform you're playing it on, it's going to be super smooth. I can't imagine that anything is, more efficient on the PS5, except maybe file size might be smaller or load times, but it loads in like a second anyway. That's recommended to me. It might not be the most difficult game out there, so if you're somebody who really wants to challenge yourself, it's probably not going to be necessarily for you. In a similar vein, we got Terra for the PS4. That is... Terra is... It's like, what was that game called? Was it like, not Moonlighter, it was Choplifter sort of thing. But like, it's weird. It's like, what if you took an Atari game and then scaled it up to like 1080p or 4K, but left like just by like scaling the world up and leaving the smaller sprites. So you're going around, you're bombing enemies on this, in like a space sort of motif with trees and planets. It's a very, very early 80s style game with modern twists on it, just being, it's like Defender, where you can go left or right, you bomb things, you fill up on gas, you move on, basic geometric shapes. It's a very retro Atari Intellivision style of arcadey feel of a game. Pretty neat. This one is brought to us by who is the publisher on that? Let us double check here. I believe... I'm not 100% sure who the publisher is on it. Let's see. It is being published by, I think, by the developer, Funbox Media. So it's been available on Steam and PS4 now for a few months. I think it retails for about $10. If you like arcadey style games from the 80s, but brought sort of to the modern day. And again, this is a game that just loads pretty much instantly. It's not a graphically intensive game, but it has a pretty unique style all its own. Also sent a VR game called Virtuoso. It is it's a musical sandbox game, which is something I haven't played before. I've played your standard rhythm games, but this is sort of think like a rhythm beat game, but in a VR space where you get to control instruments and make your own music. Pretty neat. It's on the Oculus, obviously, that's the the platform that we have. It is pretty unique and interesting in that I never thought of using the VR space itself to be the drummer or be the music sequencer or be the concert creator. but that's sort of what you get here is a virtual sci-fi space with different pads in front of you that swinging and hitting with the drums ends up making the music and the beat. Pretty neat. I don't know how good I would be at creating actual music this way, but it's a cool concept. And if you're looking to just work yourself up and get a good cardio going, you'll look like a bit of a fool if people don't know what you're doing. You're just like swinging through the air, smashing things. But it is kind of neat. You can make your own live loops and make music and custom tracks and all that stuff. Pretty neat stuff. I think it's a cool idea. And then let's see, is there anything else from that list of stuff that we've been going through? And these are things that we've had, again, like the last few weeks, sometimes even a little bit longer, and we've sort of been coming to them in between when we've had other projects that we're working on. There is... Oh, yes, one that came in fairly recently was Just Die Already. That is a game that we talked about, I think it was a couple of years ago. Was it 2019's E3 or 2018's E3? That was the weird game where it was the trailer was an old man waking up on like the beach or something, and he was all scowling and angry, and then we were like, what the hell is this? It was one of those weird, quirky, almost like Devolver Digital style looking games, even though it wasn't. And it was Just Die Already Old People Mayhem Sandbox. Well, I had my brother over, and we decided to try it out. And the first thing that happened was we got our heads chopped off, and we had to pick up our head and open up doors, and just when it says Old People Mayhem Sandbox, they're not joking. It is beyond weird. It is something that you pick up, like, I don't know if you play it for hours and hours and hours at a time, but it's something where you want to break off some steam and just work your way through some stress. It is a strange, unique experience, and it's exactly what I was hoping for. Not much I can do for like a full review, so that's why it's going to be in here with our sort of indie roundup, because I just I'm not sure how to describe it, except the title is pretty much perfect. Like literally, we got our head chopped off in the first second, and we're running around an apartment trying to find our way out by like getting a key to unlock the door while still holding our head and trying not to let our blood all come out of our body, like a chicken that's got its head chopped off running around. It's got weighted physics to it and how you pick up things and move things. It's a weird freaking game. Not going to be for everybody. We got a PS4 copy of it. Again, it's not going to be for everybody, but if it's in line with your sense of humor and you like quirky, weird indie games, it's worth a shot. Check out some YouTube videos on people playing it, maybe see if it's going to be something that's up your alley. Yeah, that's probably going to do it for our indie roundup here of different games. Oh wait, there was one more. One that I honestly didn't know that we had access to, but I logged into one of our press outlet sites and was looking to see, hey, because you put in requests sometimes for games, and you'll get an update saying, oh, you got one or you didn't get one, and I went, you know what, let me do some maintenance and I'll update our profile, and I'll see, are we gonna have to change anything, updating our social media stuff. And then I saw there was a section for unretrieved, games. And I went, wait a minute, we have an unretrieved game? What are you talking about? It's one that I don't think we ever actually got information on as far as like redeeming it or knew that we even had it. And it's another adaptation, visual representation of a game that, I was like, I didn't know this game existed, first of all, but I was intrigued, and it's Orwell's Animal Farm. Now, we know the book, the famous book that I think a lot of us had to read or was recommended to read in like grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, somewhere around there. Well, Orwell's Animal Farm is somebody's attempt to take that book and make a visual interactive game representation of it. So didn't know exactly what to expect, except that it's pretty much a straightforward adaptation of the story done in the visual novel adventure style, where you get to know all the characters from the book. It fills out a list for you, a reference. It's really a new way of telling that story. The artwork is beautiful. I can see this being a pretty important release. It's apparently been waiting for us to check out for about 6 months, but we really didn't know it was there, so sorry. And I didn't know where to put it. I was like, oh, how do I talk about it? Well, we'll put it in this here because it's available on Steam. If you... I think it might be available on Apple as well, but if you want it on Steam, I think it's about $8 Canadian or so. So you're looking at probably about $5 American. So it's a visual novel, text-based, choice-driven narrative is how they describe it. Yeah, it's an interactive book, and it does exactly what it needs to do. And you can hover the mouse over, highlight different people, find out about them. It's a good way of getting, I think, younger people into the story that maybe wouldn't normally be interested in reading. Like, it's the kind of book that you hear about and as an adult you want to read because you're like, it's important. But kids nowadays, maybe they wouldn't like it, but having it be presented in a game format will get the concepts and get the story and the moral and the meanings and everything across maybe in a better, more transformative nature. So yeah, that is it as far as this indie roundup. I'm going to take a quick break here, grab something to drink so that I can soothe my sore E3 talking throat, and come back with, I think we've got a couple reviews. We're going to have one for, I think, the rest of the Mill Creek stuff that was released that we didn't get to on our last show, as well as one game review that I have. I don't think we have anything from Birdman this time, but the game review is for the new Alex Kidd and Miracle World DX release. So I'll be back in just a moment.
This is a fair request, and I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or glue sniffers.
This is part 2 of our June Mill Creek Roundup. We talked briefly about a lot of the other multi-pack releases that came out, and I think we briefly touched upon it, but if we didn't, I'll mention that the Critic had a re-release for the first time since, it's been a heck of a long time since that was in print, and it's the original episodes, the discs that have been out for years, but repackaged in a smaller slimline case and available to purchase for the first time in quite some time. So if you're a fan of the Critic, which I know Birdman is, he was happy to see that is out. I think it went before its time. It should have had at least a couple more seasons, but it's at a time when if you didn't have like crazy ratings, you were never going to get renewed. Also, there's been a couple Ultraman releases. Ultraman Leo, which is the next in the classic line they've released, where in the past, the newer releases of the Ultraman series have been put out in slimline cases, but the classics line, they work back right from the very beginning. They've been coming out with a motif where if you line up all the spines, it makes a big mural. So this is the next release in that series. Same quality that we've known now for the last, over a year now, where they've been putting these out. Happy to see we're slowly meeting near the middle. We're starting to get to the point where we're getting to the modern day when it comes to the Ultraman releases, and it's obviously high quality. You get the Blu-rays, you get a booklet that describes the episodes, and you get a digital code to redeem on Movie Spree, Mill Creek's bespoke movie streaming service, which is always fantastic. Now, and that's funny because people were saying initially, I don't think that the service is going to last. It's lasting. They keep adding to it, which is awesome. and there's apps for it now on I think Roku and other platforms where you can watch. And I wanted to get to the Sonic Boom release. That was the one where, I had friends telling me, oh, this is a better Sonic show than you're going to expect. And I was like, I don't know. Sonic, I like well, I didn't really care for the one Sonic cartoon in the early 90s. There was always the Saturday morning version, which was the one that had the better story. That's been good and or terrible for the franchise, depending on how you look at it, because it spawned the weird world of the super fans that create their own characters, and there's been like rights issues with the comics and character creation, yada yada. The show itself is pretty good, and I think my brother was he was younger than me, 6 years or so he watched Sonic Underground and I think Sonic X, but Sonic Boom I only know from the terrible video games that were tied into it, and I thought, okay, well, that means the show is going to be terrible. Not true. It turns out the show is quirky, fun. It has a lot of self-referential humor. There's stuff in there that's humor for the parents and the adults to get, and the kids, may not get it, or it may be a multi-layered joke that works on a few different levels, which is pretty nice to see. There's a ton of episodes. It's one of those shows that I guess when it came out, it was created not for syndication, but they gave it a syndication length of like episode order, which is not that common anymore. Like over 2 seasons. Now I should note too that I believe the episodes are 11 minutes long, so it's the kind of thing where you'd have 2 episodes in a syndication package sandwiched together. And if you go by that, it's 26 episodes per season, but in fact it's actually 52 individual 11-minute episodes per season. This is the season 1 release. There's a season 2 that hopefully comes from Mill Creek, because this turned out to be a better set than expected, for a total of 104 episodes, or 52 half-hour packaged episodes, which would equal the minimum for a syndicated season. It's you end up with enough, one per every Saturday for the entire year. It used to be it was 65 for a syndication package, but that was back when they used to do sometimes like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like Power Rangers and that sort of stuff. So it is nice to see somebody had faith in it to renew it for that length of time, and that was Cartoon Network. I don't know, it ran from 2014 to 2017. I don't know if we're going to see stuff like that ever again, unless streaming networks decide to give like 100 episode orders or something. But I can say that it was well put together. The voice acting was pretty good. The jokes were good. The CG was not top notch as far as detailed quality for the backgrounds and that, but it was pleasing to the eye. It wasn't this garish mess, and the frame rate wasn't like a horrible stuttery mess that a lot of middling budget CGI shows end up becoming. It was a pretty well made show, and I was, after hearing my friends say that, hey, you should actually check it out, it's, go into it with an open mind, I can understand why, and it's pretty good, and I'm looking forward to if they release a second one. This is something that you can pick up for your kids and not be angry that it's going to be like a brain dead show that they're going to repeat over and over again. There's no inane BS involved with this. The closest thing that it resembles, if you're a fan of it, was maybe the Donkey Kong Country TV show, that CGI Canadian, I think South African co-production that I think it had 1 or 2 seasons of. It's similar to that. So if you like 90s style video game tie-in TV shows, you'll probably like this. As far as features go, it's pretty straightforward, no features, except it is full 1080p. It's higher quality than you're going to see on a streaming network or on TV, and it's 5.1 surround. Not a lot of kids shows get that treatment, but this did, so I got to give it kudos, and I'm happy that they released it, and hopefully it gets seen by more people.
Do you have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Hold that thought. It's crapper time.
Our friends at Merge Games sent over a review copy of Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX for the PlayStation 4. Now, this isn't the first foray I've had into playing an Alex Kidd game. I did pick up a Master System probably 10, 12 years ago when I was in my big collecting phase before I realized, hey, that's kind of a waste of time. And it's more about playing the experiences, especially now with everything getting retro remakes. That was sort of a far-off thought that was probably never going to happen, at least back then. But lo and behold, we're in the modern future where everything from the 8-bit era gets a nostalgic remake. Now, this is one of those games that gets the treatment where you can play the game in the original graphics or swap over to the modern graphics on the fly. I will note one thing. The modern graphics are cool looking and everything, but there seems to be something with the hitboxes where it feels a little floaty, and sometimes an enemy doesn't even appear to touch you, but you die, and then you flip over to the older style graphics, and it seems much more tight. It's almost as if they don't adjust where the enemies move to, or where your hitboxes are in the collision detection with the new graphics, and it's basing it entirely on the old graphics with like a fresh coat of paint on top. So that means that it's very difficult to discern, and it takes a while to get used to where you can move around in the new HD hand-drawn graphic style. And I ended up playing most of the game in the previous graphic style because otherwise I couldn't complete it. Even with an easy mode, and easy mode is, I'm saying in quotes, is unlimited lives. You still get one-hit kills and die and move back to the beginning of the game, or back to the beginning of the level, sorry, for that matter. The bosses are a rock, paper, scissors mechanic, so it does lead to a little bit of frustration in the game design from back then, because you can completely lose based on chance. There's not really a tell for any of the characters as to which you should be selecting. So you could do really well or spend 30 minutes trying to get to the end of a level only to fight a boss and lose because of a random number generator. So there's aspects to this that I would have hoped that they would have gone in and fixed or altered or given you the option to play a new version of. This just seems to be mostly a graphical upgrade. And unless you're a really hardcore, super fan of Alex Kidd or of the style of hard platformer, and you can get past a lot of the quirks when it comes to the physics, because it feels loose when you jump. It's not very precise. There's a lot of archaic mechanics that I would have hoped they've upgraded, because a lot of these platformer adventure titles that were from the Master System and Genesis era that have had visual upgrades or new remakes and remasters, they've done quality of life improvements, and this really doesn't have any quality of life improvement. It's just a graphical overhaul that you can flip on and off on the fly, which is a little disappointing unless you're a super fan, like I said, or you're somebody who is up for the challenge and is totally cool with that. I don't know if I can recommend this to most people, and especially since this might be something that a lot of kids would on first glance want to get into. It's too hard for children. It was too hard for kids back in the day, but this makes it even harder if you want to play it with the new graphical style. So I can only recommend it to super fans. I honestly can't recommend it in its current state to the vast majority of the audience that might even want to play it. And I hate to say that because I did enjoy my time with it, but my time was spent 75% of the time being frustrated. And this isn't, because it's got the random number generator mechanic when it comes to fighting bosses, it's not really something that you can, in quotes, get good at if it's completely random. So for a nostalgia trip, or if you're a big fan of the previous ones, you're totally okay with the difficulty and the quirks that come with it, it does exactly what it advertises. But otherwise, I can't recommend it.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.